Hey everyone. So some of you may not know this, but Reinhardt was originally my main character, so he has a very special place in my heart. I remember back in the early days of Overwatch, Reinhardt was essentially always useful. Like the maps even seemed like they were designed around him, specifically for the use of his shield. Every choke was was the same size of his shield. So it makes sense that the entire kit now feels a bit kind of played out and archaic. Kind of like Mercy, but that's going to be a different video. Anyways, much like my recent how to fix videos, I've kind of been putting all the skills changes in one video instead of breaking them down with each skill like I did the Doomfist videos. So I think for this video, I'm going to be splitting it apart again. I'll probably make one for his shield and one for his charge. So what's the problem with Reinhardt? Reinhardt has two problems in Overwatch 2. His ability to get to the fight, and his overall reliance on his team. So let's look at how both of these things can be addressed with his shield. Then maybe later on I'll make a video of how both of these things can be addressed with his charge attack. I think it's important for us to first start off by comparing him to all the other tanks. There are three big differences that make Reinhardt lacking compared to the other tanks. Number one, unlike any of the other tanks, Reinhardt can't do anything when he activates his survival skill, which is his giant shield. Second, his survival skill greatly diminishes his mobility, so it's hard for him to get into the fight to begin with. And three, he has no way of increasing his own health. Now in comparison, let's look at D.Va. She can still shoot, bump, and delete people when she has her defense matrix up. 2, she can boost into the enemy with her defense matrix up, allowing her to get into the fight. 3, she doesn't really have a self-healing ability, however, she has a second chance type of ability, right? When she gets demeched and meched over and over again. But also her ability to get in and out of the fight really quickly allows her to survive, because she can go get healing and then come back into the fight. Like there's nothing really stopping her. Next, let's look at Orisa. Her spinning staff is also an attack and prevents all incoming damages. It also boosts her speed. And her Fortify ability lets her still shoot and throw spears while she's taking less damage. Plus, she could combine her spinning spear and her reinforcement and her Fortify ability, and during this state, she's essentially impossible to kill. She can still fight while putting up all her defenses. Let's look at number 2. For her entrance, her spinning shield stops all incoming damages and increases her movement speed to be able to engage the enemy. But on top of that, she doesn't even need to get that close because she has a gun. 3. As for her ability to increase her own health, Fortify increases her HP by 125 HP and reduces all incoming damages by 40%. Plus, she can't be headshot or CC'd, so, her effective HP gain is actually over 200. Winston, for number 1, he can put up his shield and just keep fighting. Like he just puts it down and just immediately starts fighting. His entrance is a giant leap, and that's that's all he really needs. He has a really good entrance into a fight. As for his ability to heal, much like D.Va, he doesn't really have one, but he has a great escape that allows him to get in and out really quickly, so he can leave, get some healing, come back in without anything really stopping him. Sigma, number 1, Sigma can throw his shield up and then just start doing whatever he wants. Number 2, to enter a fight, he puts his shield up, and then he can slowly start throwing his balls as he floats into the enemy. But again, he doesn't really need to get that deep into the fight because he's a really good long-range fighter. And as for his healing ability, he has a suck ability that stops all incoming damages, almost all incoming damages, and then turns it into his own HP. Even Doomfist, although Power Block stops him from doing what he needs to do, it's not his main survival skill, although it is there as kind of like a tacked on ability that I personally think needs to go. Anyways, Doomfist's survival skill is that he has extreme evasive prowesses. So him fighting is what makes him survive. He's just really fucking hard to hit. Anyways, he doesn't have to choose between surviving and fighting if he's being played correctly. And also you'll notice that the characters who don't have the ability to attack while they're defending themselves, those are the 3 characters lower on the tier list. That would be Doomfist, Reinhardt, and Junker Queen. So yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, anyways, for his entrance, he has that giant leap and a great punch. Well, a punch that moves him quickly into the enemy team. And as for shield regeneration, number 3, Just like I said before, the more he fights, the more he heals himself. Roadhog. Well, Roadhog's, for number one, his survival skill is more of he kills you before you kill him. But his hook allows him to not need to get directly into the fight. But yeah, he essentially just has a ridiculous amount of HP that lets him get close enough to essentially just one shot kill somebody. One combo kill somebody. His entrance is, to simply not give a shit. Again, he just walks in and has a ridiculous amount of HP and then gets close enough to kill somebody because his hook is so fucking long. So essentially, when people see a Roadhog coming, they're just leaving. They're not just standing there shooting at him. They disperse because nobody wants to get hooked, or else they instantly die. Number 3, his healing ability. Well, you already know. He takes a breather and halves all the damage that he takes in and heals half his HP. And is still able to move around. Essentially, his entire kit is to not give a shit. I can't believe I'm doing all of them. Junker Queen. Number 1. No, she doesn't really have a defensive skill. Kind of like what I said earlier about like Doomfist like that. So it's probably why she's on a lower tier. However, her self-healing seems to be her main defensive thing her kit is built around. Which she does, and she does that again by fighting. So again, she doesn't have to choose between the two. Number 2, Junkrat's entrance is her shouting voice. Or what is it? Her commanding shout or something. It increases her movement speed and gives her a ton of health. And as to heal herself, her entire kit is centered around self-healing. So she has her commanding shout, and she has that adrenaline ability that heals her the more she does bleeding damage to certain characters. Well, to her opponents. So Wrecking Ball now. Number 1. Ball shield generation is fucking ridiculous. Plus, he already has a fuck ton of health. But his adaptive shield could grant him up to 500, even 600 HP if there's a bomb around. And even when the shield's up, he can still do whatever he needs to do. Nothing is stopping him from doing anything. Number 2, as for his entrance to a fight, it's fucking Wrecking Ball. He comes in like a Wrecking Ball. And for his health generation, like I said earlier, the adaptive shield is crazy. Gives him a ton of health. Lastly, I have Zarya. Zarya can still attack and move normally when she's bubbling herself. So that's number 1. Number 2, to enter a fight, she just bubbles herself. And her attack is also pretty long range, so she doesn't really need to get too close. And for number 3, for her ability to, generate her own HP, a lot of her HP is based off of shields. So you get out of a fight long enough and then your shields just start to regenerate again. And also you have your bubble, so you're not even taking damage all the time. That was really long, and in hindsight, I think I probably should have just given 4 examples. But yeah, we went through it all. Sorry, guys. So anyways, you get it. Reinhardt cannot do what he needs to do when his defensive skills are up. And he has no good way to enter a fight or increase his own health. So how can we do this with his shield? In short, we need to find a way to allow him to swing his hammer while having a shield up. And I honestly didn't know how to go about this. Especially since a giant shield is such a massive part of his design and personality. Kind of like how I said before, Doomfist's punch is part of his personality. Mercy being able to revive people is part of her personality. So it's not something that can just leave like that. So one thing we need to remember about Reinhardt is that when you get really good at Reinhardt, you realize that his shield isn't really for protecting his team. It's to be used selfishly to protect yourself. It can protect your team, when there's an ultimate or, things like that. But honestly, you should be swinging that hammer around, messing everybody up. So my first idea is I don't think that there's any reason anymore for him to have reduced speed when his shield is up. It also doesn't make much sense since his shield is hardened light. So it's very light to begin with. So it just, that doesn't really, it's not heavy. But yeah, anyways, everyone can either project their shields or even boost themselves or even boost their movement speed like D.Va and Orisa while they have their defensive version of a shield up. So yes, the first change would be to not reduce his movement speed when his shield is up. Orisa moves faster when she's spinning her javelin, and D.Va literally has rockets to boost her forward while she has her defense matrix up. So I don't see why Reinhardt needs a movement penalty anymore. Number 2, And none of these are like all together, right? These are just separate ideas that, you know, we can mix and match depending on what we think. So they don't all have to be applied at the same time. So anyways, yeah. Number 2, have him be able to attack from behind his shield. So essentially make it a bit smaller and allow him to attack through it, kind of like a gladiator. Maybe make it more of a stabbing forward type of motion, kind of like the shield and spear combo, like a Spartan. Yeah, like a Spartan. Honestly, you might not even have to reduce the size of his shield, but you know that could be a thing if for balancing purposes if you think it's necessary. And maybe reduce the health of the shield to 1,000 instead of 1,200. The third idea would be to allow him to push and tackle people with his shield. Maybe a move that lets him sprint but not charge, like the ability to pin. More of a diva-like charge, but with the speed of a soldier sprinting ability. So, you know, he could have his shield up and sprint forward, maybe knock people from side to side, things like that. Nothing too crazy. And it could only last for 3 seconds and be on a, I don't know, 5-second cooldown, doing no more damage than 50 damages per hit. And if you think about it, that's also kind of like Orissa's spinning javelin. I didn't even notice that when I made the idea. So it already kind of exists. Well, it definitely already exists with D.Va, right? In her own, but like all of these are in different ways. So it's nothing too crazy, I don't think. And for number 4, you might be asking yourself, well, his new method of being able to heal himself, I didn't really give an answer for that. Well, I think him having a fuck ton of health and a giant shield he can kind of pull out whenever he needs to is kind of doing that for him. That's why all the suggestions I have still have him keeping his shield, also because it's part of his normal kit. So yeah, being able to, in the middle of a fight, you pull up your shield, you have an extra 1,000 HP in front of you. I think that's not nothing. So essentially, we're giving him an entire playstyle centered around his shield, like an entire kind of different moveset he can do while he has his shield up. And I don't think anything I suggested so far is too crazy. Let him poke his hammer from behind the shield, and maybe let him, you know, run into people without pinning them. But I do have a much wilder idea. So yeah, time for the wild idea, guys. Remove his shield entirely and make it like Wrecking Ball's adaptive shield, where his shield is now just kind of covering his entire body for, let's say, 400 HP. And he could also use the sprint ability I mentioned earlier, where he kind of run into people, but with his body. But it doesn't pin you, remember, it doesn't pin you. Imagine a Reinhardt that yells at the top of his lungs and then is covered by his shield and starts sprinting towards you with his hammer. The speed doesn't need to be extremely high. Again, like I said before, it could be something like Soldier's running speed. And this would be cool because he would essentially be some guy with 2 different levels of charging ability. One could be his sprint, where, you know, he runs into you and kind of knocks you into the sides. And 2, he has his regular charge ability where he could charge you and pin you. He'd be essentially like a Marauder Berserker character, and I think that matches perfectly with his character design. Anyways, I'd have this ability be like on a 8-second cooldown, like Roadhog's Take a Breather. So yeah, like a full body protection thing and he also has his ability to sprint, just to be able to get into the fight and also fight while he has his defensive abilities up. It would also cover his added HP thing that he doesn't have. So yeah, this one's a little bit more crazy, but I think it's pretty cool and kind of matches. I love the idea of a Reinhardt running in with his hammer, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, he's coming!" Anyways, those are my ideas. Let me know what you think. The next video will be maybe what we can do to his charge ability. But honestly, now that I finished this video, this actually might be enough. Yeah, we'll see. Anyways, let me know whether you like it or hate it. Put your ideas down. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. And don't forget, I love you. I'm going to interrupt this video to remind you to like and subscribe. If 10% of the people who watch my videos were subscribed, I would be able to be a YouTube partner or be an official YouTube channel. So please, guys, help me out.